This episode is brought to you by DistroKid.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon. The holidays are here, and you know what that means. It's time to get your friends and family the gifts they deserve. Take the stress out of shopping with Amazon's great deals and low prices on a huge range of items from toys to tech and much more. Whoever you're gifting for, Amazon has great prices on everything you need this holiday season. Shop early holiday deals now.
Hey everyone, today's guest is Dave Pirner, lead vocalist and guitarist for the Minneapolis, Minnesota rock band Soul Asylum. Together we tackle the writing, recording, and inspiration behind the hit single, Misery, taken from their 1995 album, Let Your Dim Light Shine. Dave is a repeat guest here on Chris DeMakes a Podcast, and it was a pleasure breaking down arguably my favorite Soul Asylum song. Dave said that Misery is basically a social commentary regarding the overall vibe of the 1990s. The general disillusionment and direction of life, as evidenced in the lyric, I know just what you need. I might just have the thing. That quick fix Dave referred to as the Prozac generation. And he just may be onto something. After all, the 90s were the generation of discontent, and a lot of the music from that time reflected just that. Surprisingly, Dave mentioned that he didn't feel any pressure to follow up their highly successful previous album, that these were just the next batch of songs. And with Butch Vig in the producer's chair and Andy Wallace at the mixing desk, the results are awesome. So for all this and a story about being locked in an extended stay hotel, armed only with a guitar and a 4-track recorder, stay tuned.
Hey, have you heard? Chris DeMakes a Podcast. Hey, have you heard? Chris DeMakes a Podcast. Hey, have you heard? Chris DeMakes a Podcast. Hey, have you heard? Chris DeMakes a Podcast.
Dave, good to see you again. How are things?
Good to see you, Chris. Things are rolling along, as they say.
Yeah, buddy, you're out right now on the road with Live and Stone Temple Pilots playing tonight in Jacksonville, Florida at Daly's place. That was the first thing I asked you. I said, sweating your butt off down there in Florida? You said, I'm trying to stay in the air conditioning, and that is always the right answer when on tour in Florida. You're a repeat guest, Dave. You were here on July 25th, 2022. We talked about somebody to shove that day. And today, I just want to start out by saying thank you so much for carving some time out. The last thing I want to do on tour is usually speak to somebody, so I really appreciate it. We're going to talk about Misery today. And man, pound for pound, this might be my favorite, or at least in the top 3 Soul Asylum songs. This is such a jam. It was the lead single from your 7th studio album, Let Your Dim Light Shine, which was released on June 6, 1995, track 1 of 14. And the album was produced by Butch Vig, which, I gotta ask, the prior record, Gravedancers Union, was produced by Michael Beinhorn. Butch is awesome. Everyone knows how great he is, but Gravedancers sold 3 million records, highly successful. Was there a reason you didn't go back and work with Michael?
I think we talked to Butch before. We had wanted to work with Butch on the previous record. No, there isn't really a reason. We just kind of try something new every time. I think that's how things were going back then. It was pretty much, if you have an opportunity to work with different people, why not?
Okay, and I didn't ask that looking for any dirt or anything like that. I was just curious because, a lot of bands, they want to repeat that success. The label chimes in, the A&R person, they're like, hey, you should probably stick with the winning formula here. But I like that you set out with Butch and Misery. Do you recall writing the track?
Yep, I sure do.
Was it between Grave Dancers and the Let Your Dim Light Shine record, or was it something you had sitting around for a while?
Yep, it was between those 2 records. I was in Vancouver on an extended stay. And I went to a music store and I rented a 4-track recording unit and just enough gear to do a minimal sort of thing, like whatever I could rent at the used music store, which turned out to be, I don't know, a 4-track recorder and a keyboard and a guitar. And I think that was one of the first things that I wrote with my new setup. So yeah, the way I think about it is like I was just trying to figure out how the gear was working, and which is something I do more often than not. I'll be somewhere, I'll set up a mini studio situation and just start recording. So I'll just make something up just to see if all the gear's working. And I'm pretty sure that's how it came about, yeah.
Well, and that's about as primitive as you get. We're talking, this was around 90, 94 when you're, 95 when you're demoing this stuff, and you just said 4-track. So it's not like this was easy, or if you wanted to make a mix or somebody, in your band, you either had to play it in the van or the bus or overnight on a cassette.
Yeah, I don't recall ever like mixing it.
Yeah.
So I think I probably recorded it and then knew it in my head and then showed it to the band. But yeah, that's a good question. I don't know if the 4-track, I don't think that tape ever got mixed in it. Maybe it did. I don't know.
Well, I was going to ask, do you have any of those demos from this period?
I have 800,000 cassettes.
Probably sitting in a closet in a box somewhere.
Formats that have come and gone, and formats that I don't have a machine to play them on, and machines that I do.
Yeah, that's the big thing, right? I don't have an ADAT machine anymore. How can I play these tapes?
Yeah, I got 2 ADAT machines that don't work.
Was there any pressure from Columbia, from the A&R person, from yourself to follow up Grave Dancers Jr.? Was this the next batch of songs you were just writing, or did you have any self-imposed pressure?
Well, I mean, pretty much it was just, it's the same cycle. I mean, you make a record, you finish it, you go tour it, and then you start writing the next record. And yeah, I mean, it was all just the way I've done things and the way I've been doing things. And, any kind of pressure like that, I just avoid it with all sort of, yeah, I don't like to think about what happens after I finish something while I'm starting it,
Well, and that's commendable, because just as much as, we don't have a choice when we put our songs out there into the world, we don't have a choice if they go through the roof or they fail. And it just so happened that the previous record, it blew up. And sometimes that is, it's just how the stars align. The album, Let Your Dim Light Shine, was the first with drummer Sterling Campbell, who had previously provided half of the drums on the previous album, Grave Dancers Union. And I'm going to tell you something, Dave. This is pretty cool. Weird Al Yankovic did a parody of Misery called Syndicated Incorporated.
See the reruns constantly. They're on my TV. Syndicated Incorporated. Well, I know what's on that tube. I know just what to see.
And I've always said, man, if Weird Al covers your song, you kind of made it.
Yeah, that's what I said too.
What?
Here I am.
And here I am, sitting in a dressing room.
Yeah.
Okay. What was that like? Did you get a phone call from management or?
No, actually, it was kind of interesting in a way that I didn't even know about it.
What?
So it came out and somebody told me about it, and I don't even remember how I got the CD or how I heard it. And I think there's another one on that record. I did do an interview with Mike Mills and the dude from the Presidents of the United States of America.
Yeah, Chris Ballou, because we talked about Weird Al because they covered one of his songs.
Some other guy. And yeah, the dudes that were doing the interview were really into Weird Al. So it was kind of funny because one of the stories that I had for this particular interview was one of the guys that was doing the interview said, that's how I found out about Soul Asylum. And I said, yeah, we used to have a guy that ran our fan webpage. I don't know if he still does it or if it's called a webpage or anything like that, but that's how he found out about Soul Asylum. So I think at the end of it, I ended up thanking Weird Al for turning people onto Soul Asylum. Yeah.
I mean, would you ever have thought when you started this band in the early '80s that someone was going to find out about you guys through Weird Al? I mean, that's a trip in and of itself.
No, that never occurred to me.
Well, Misery reached number 20 on the U.S. Hot 100, number 1 on the Modern Rock Tracks chart, and number 3 in Canada. And the album, Let Your Dim Light Shine, went platinum with 1 million copies sold. Dave, I want to jump into this bad boy. It's 4 minutes and 24 seconds. Pound for pound, one of my favorites, if not my favorite Soul Asylum song. This is awesome. The intro, panned mostly right with kind of like a slap echo on it. Panned left is a count off. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, a single voice. And on the 4th time, the voice all of a sudden pans left on the last 4 that you hear. It's really interesting. Just that one time. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
They say misery loves company. We could start a company and make misery.
They say misery loves company. We could start a company and make misery.
Yeah, I suppose it's supposed to be funny, and it's kind of a play on words, and it just kind of gives you the direction of where I'm going, which is pretty much just a send up of corporate America, I suppose, or just about any place else that puts people in compromising job situations and stuff like that. Yeah.
Well, I kind of thought maybe this was a take on maybe the record industry. You guys had been through a lot. You had been putting out your own stuff for years, got signed to A&M, then of course went to Columbia. So I thought maybe this was a take on the business in general.
I think there is some of that going on for sure. The video had a little bit of that element to it, which made it seem more so, maybe. But another failure on my part was I almost had Mike Judge making the video, and he had some really funny ideas.
Really?
Like kids crying into funnels and all the tears going through a hose that go. Yeah, I don't know why it didn't work out with Mike, but it was really fun to talk to him, and he had some funny ideas, and I think he got it,
That is really cool. Well, drums, bass, and those guitars from the top are all in here in verse 1. The guitars here are nice and sparkly, and a big chord rings out into pre-chorus 1. Something else I didn't mention at the top. 8 bars when the whole band kicks in. Acoustic guitar, and there's an arpeggiated guitar as well. It sounds electric there at the top. And then we get into pre-chorus 1.
Misery.
Man, this is like 3 different parts in one pre-chorus. You get the first line here, frustrated incorporated. I know just what you need. I might just have the thing. I know what you'd pay to see. The second 2 lines, there's just this rhythmic thing going on with the band, and you kind of mellow out on pay to see in the back half. Really interesting here. What's happening lyrically?
Well, I suppose Frustrated Incorporated becomes the, I don't know, the corporation that I'm making fun of or becoming a part of, or is the enigma that is the thing that makes people miserable, but making some sort of promise of not being miserable. I don't know. I think it's pretty concise, actually.
Well, yeah, and the last line, I know what you'd pay to see. So it's just kind of calling out, like, homogenizing and packaging and paying for something, I guess, with that line.
Yeah, I think there is a lot of, I don't know. I mean, I think that punk rock has always been kind of a thing where people are bitching, and blues music is kind of an origin of maybe that, and it was the culture at the time was pretty Prozac and suicide and shit like that, you know.
That definitely was the 90s. Well, on the line, Frustrated Incorporated, the drums go to a more straightforward but driving rock beat, along with eighth note stereo guitars and two guitars that are feeding back. I mentioned this pre-chorus takes you kind of through three different feels. On the lines, I know just what you need. I might just have a thing, and I know what you'd. Those things are that rhythmic thing that's going on with the whole band. That is stereo guitars, bass, acoustic guitars, and it sounds like a B3 organ is in there as well. And do you remember if the vocals are doubled here? They sound doubled in this section.
No, I don't remember, but if you can tell, I didn't do a very good job.
No, it's pretty locked.
It wouldn't surprise me. It seems like that would be a good place to double a vocal.
Right on. The lines I'm talking about, the rhythmic thing that's happening with the band, reminds me so much of, it was originally done by Jeff Lynne's first band, The Move, but he re-recorded it for ELO, a song called Do Ya. And before it goes to the chorus, do you want my love, it does this rhythmic thing. I'm telling you, Dave, I've been driving around the last 3 days, and it finally hit me this morning that it reminds me of that ELO song, that transition there. I absolutely love it. It's so cool. The chorus one comes in at the 52-second mark. Put me out of my misery. I do it for you. Would you do it for me? We will always be busy making misery.
It does tend to continue to fold in on itself, I suppose, with these promises of what's supposed to make you happy and what's supposed to be fulfilling and what you've grown up believing and what you start finding out once you get out into the world. And, someone's always going to be telling you they got the answer. They got the way to make you feel all right. In the end, maybe somebody just needs to tell you to stop complaining. I don't know. Shut the fuck up kind of thing.
Well, you said it before. That kind of was the 90s generation. You know, you said the Prozac generation. It totally makes sense.
Like the crowd, black gold in a white flag.
Hey everybody, don't go anywhere. We got lots more coming up with Dave Pirner after a few words from our sponsors.
Looking to elevate your music career? DistroKid is a digital music distribution service that enables musicians to distribute their music to online stores and streaming platforms such as Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube Music, Amazon, Tidal, and many more. DistroKid collects earnings and payments, sending them to you, the artist. With DistroKid, artists unlock a world of possibilities. From easily paying collaborators with splits, to securing your music with DistroLock, DistroKid covers all bases. Plus, you can promote your releases with Hyperfollow and create eye-catching visuals with a Spotify Canvas generator, all for free. But that's not all. Introducing the DistroKid app, now available on iOS and Android. Artists can manage their releases, view streaming stats, and withdraw earnings, all from the palm of their hand. And for those looking to perfect their sound, check out Mixia. With its simple interface and customizable mastering options, artists can make their music sound polished and professional within minutes. And don't forget about Instant Share, DistroKid's newest feature. Share large files securely with collaborators, producers, and more, ensuring your music streams at the highest quality. Ready to take your music to the next level? Download the DistroKid app and explore their suite of tools today. Plus, listeners can enjoy 30% off their first year by visiting distrokid.com/VIP/DeMakes. That's distrokid.com/VIP/DeMakes.
With Amex Platinum, you can really be in the now. Access to Resi Priority Notify. Yes. 4 p.m. checkout with fine hotels and resorts booked through Amex Travel.
We needed this.
And dedicated card member entrances at select events.
Let's go!
Means you can focus on the present moment. That's the powerful backing of American Express. Terms apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/withAmex. Card member entrance access not limited to Amex Platinum Card.
One Hit Thunder is a podcast where we both celebrate and have a good laugh about bands and artists that had just one hit that we all know. Each week, we're joined by a guest from the world of music or comedy to learn more than you ever thought you would about some songs that you can't forget. And we decide if they brought the One Hit Thunder or were nothing more than a one-hit blunder. Look, if you listen to the show, you're probably going to laugh, and I guarantee you're going to crush next time the bar has music trivia. Tag Team, Jane Child, Meredith Brooks, Looking Glass, Sean Mullins, Eiffel 65, EMF, Crash Test Dummies, Crazy Town, Chumbawamba. We have hundreds of episodes in our back catalog and a new episode each week, so pass the Dutchie, make sure you're connected, and subscribe to One Hit Thunder wherever you get your pods.
Wheelchair, I got so much left to do.
And now, back to the show.
Chorus 1, drums, bass, stereo guitars, acoustic guitar, organ, and tambourine are all in. Definitely a double vocal here. There's harmonies on everything. And on the last line, there's a descending drum fill that hits with the vocal and the band. The whole band then rings out for 4 bars and a dun-dun, 2 tom hits. Take us into verse 2, and you can really hear that organ.
Build a factory and make misery. We'll create the cure. We made the disease.
We could build a factory and make misery. We create the cure. We made the disease.
Yeah, I think that's a pre-COVID kind of AIDS kind of a sort of a reaction to something that seems like some sort of a corporate situation where they're presenting you with a problem so they can sell you the solution, I suppose, to that sort of degree. It kind of hints at a lot of corruption, I suppose.
What I meant to ask you this earlier. Do you recall what Butch, the rest of the band, or anybody at the label thought of the song when you brought it in for the record? I mean, it made it first on the album. It was the first single, but you know, a lot of times the song isn't fully realized till it's finished.
I remember playing it for David Kahn, who was the A&R guy, and he dug it. He was like, "Oh, that's cool, you know, I like that one." I was like, "All right," but yeah, I think it's something that I'm still sort of always dealing with is to whether to play. I'll start a song, I'll write it with an acoustic guitar, and it's either written to be adapted to electric, or the acoustic is sort of happening during the quieter bits. So when we finished the track and we were mixing it, I was like, this isn't right. And I added an electric guitar to the chorus because it wasn't there. And once I put that on there, I was like, okay, now it's done. But it's funny how you can get caught up in something and you're zoomed in, and you kind of, once I was zoomed out, I was like, I need to add an electric guitar to the chorus, so hold the presses, so yeah, we set up a guitar and an amp, and I did it in a very short amount of time, and I was like, okay, now it's done.
Do you recall, I know this was done to tape, but was there any digital editing done at this time? That would have been right around the time a lot of that was starting.
Well, they had a machine, a Studer 2-inch machine that you could sort of move things around. There was no visual. It was, well, we called it the hopper. And so you could kind of take a track and move it from here to there. And it was pre-Pro Tools, but some of the ideas of Pro Tools were being implemented on a Studer incredibly expensive machine.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah. Those things and bulky took up a little bit of space. Pre-chorus 2 comes off right after verse 2, the same overall instrumentation as verse 1, but we get Frustrated incorporated twice here. And the last word of pre-chorus 2 is feel instead of see. Those guitars feeding back are way more open and brooding here. It's just like the song's kind of building really cool intensity on those guitars. We also get on the back half that same rhythmic feel with the band I was talking about. But again, the most noticeable thing is Frustrated incorporated repeated twice here, and feel at the end. So talk a little bit about that. You wanted to change see to feel.
I don't really remember. I think Butch was encouraging me to use a different ending word or something. I don't remember. Wait, what else did you ask me?
I had talked about the guitar feeding back here. It's just way more open and way more brooding. I'd asked you about the word "see," and I also had mentioned that Frustrated incorporated was repeated here. It wasn't just once.
There's a similar thing going on with Somebody to Shove, which we talked about, where it'll do something once and then it'll do it twice, or it'll be the other way around, or it does something twice and then does it once and the next bit comes in. I don't know. It's an attempt to sort of throw off the cookie cutterness of it, and the Frustrated incorporated bit is. It's a weird song like that because that's the part the audience sings along to.
Well, I wanted to ask too, did anybody at the record label want to, you know how labels were back, especially back then, it's like, well, you have to name the song Frustrated Incorporated. That's what everyone's calling the radio stations with. Did you have that issue come up?
We never did, actually. I didn't run into a lot of those kind of problems with Columbia. I mean, when they signed us, we had a bunch of records under our belt, and we had already established our own thing and our fan base and whatever, and they didn't really know that much about it. So they let us do what we wanted because they didn't know what we were going for. So there wasn't a whole lot of, you should do this and not that, because it was punk rock, and punk rock to them was kind of a different sort of language, at least at the time.
That's so interesting that you say that, because I hear so many different stories. I know my own story being on a couple majors, and they're all kind of different. It really depends on who you have behind you, how involved they want to be in the songwriting, the A&R people. I've heard absolute nightmares, so it's good it went that way, and that was your experience with them. Chorus 2. The lyric changes here. I think that's awesome. Before we go to chorus 2, I do want to mention that I would make an argument that the pre-chorus is almost the chorus, the Frustrated incorporated. And when you get to the end of the song, that kind of all comes together as an amalgamation of the two things. But chorus 2. Put me out of my misery, all you suicide kings and you drama queens, forever after happily making misery.
Actually, I think I saw the expression suicide kings on the binding of a script at the time. So my brain just went straight to drama queens. And that's kind of how my brain works, I guess.
I'll tell you what else I like here is we all know happily ever after. I've never heard forever after happily. It's very strange, but it sings really cool.
Forever after happily making misery.
Yeah, it's a very, very interesting line. Again, we get harmonies on everything here. And at the very end of chorus 2, the band stops again and a riffy guitar panned off left comes in, morphing into a guitar solo / bridge, I'm calling this part. It's over stereo guitars, bass, drums, and organ. The band stops and rings out for the last few bars as the guitar panned off left kind of noodles into a dwindle. The key here is also awesome. You go for the solo, you go to the key of A, the next chord is E to D, and then you're A, E to that F sharp. When you drop back into C for verse 3, it's really cool. It kind of seamlessly drops back in, but it's almost jarring when you first go to that. Talk about a departure for a bridge. It's really interesting.
Yeah, I think that was that's kind of a thing that we do. Switch it up for the solo. And I do recall that at that point, me and the other guitar player he would take a swipe at the solo and then I would take a swipe at the solo. And we kind of go back and forth and use the best pieces of each person. So it's a composite of the good ideas that me and him came up with for just winging it on a solo.
Did you have to then go back and learn what you played for live?
Well, I know the solos I play on records are mostly replayed by the other guitar player.
Okay, well that's kind of what I was asking. Like, so someone takes the lead and says, "I'm going to play all this live," so they're going to have to learn it at that point. Verse 3.
Satisfy your greed. Get what you need. It's only envy. So empty.
Now, did you satisfy your greed? Get what you need? Was it only envy? So empty. On that second line, get what you need, we get just a single guitar wail. Again, almost country-ish here, but the same basic instrumentation as verse 1 and verse 2 for the rest of it. What's happening here?
Well, I suppose that would be the resolve, and I'd like to have that moment of what just happened and sort of take the time-space thing and go, all right, what am I talking about? What has happened? And are you satisfied now with you're trying to solve your miserable situation? And is it money? Is that what really makes people happy? I mean, I don't know, but I suppose it is asking that question.
Something else I wanted to ask in chorus 2, because you never really get a chorus again. The outro is we're going to come to in a moment, but did Butch ever discuss, hey, maybe we shouldn't have a different chorus for chorus 2 because the lyrics are different there, or it just kind of always sat like that?
No, Butch was pretty standoffish when it came to that sort of thing.
No kidding. Okay. That's interesting. I didn't know. I've watched some stuff with him. I didn't know how hands-on he might be with those types of things. You really only get one chorus at the top. The second chorus is different lyrics. So I always find that interesting in songs. You're trying to, hey, this is the chorus. But again, the argument could be made. The hook in this song is the frustrated incorporated, which is the very next part after verse 3. We get a third pre-chorus. But this time's interesting because you go to falsetto both times.
Huh. I guess I'd forgotten that.
So it's really hooky. It's really catchy. Do you remember, was that your idea? Or, I don't know if that would have been my first go-to. I probably just would have sang it again.
That was probably an Andy Wallace move as much as anything. In a situation
really?
Like that, I'll probably have, here's 3 different ways and whatever the dynamic ends up being. But yeah, that's the part of the song that the audience sings nowadays. So I'd completely forgotten about.
Yeah, well, and I love what you just said, because I've heard this on the show before, Dave, about Andy Wallace in particular, about how people get mixes back and they're like, oh yeah, why'd that harmony end up there? Like, oh, Andy probably did it. So he was given choices and he mixed whatever in. That's really cool. A couple other things in pre-chorus 3 here. The kick drum is playing eighth notes here, along with the stereo guitar's bass and those guitars feeding back and growing with intensity. The toms and the snare drum come in on the second half here and build with intensity as we launch in to what I'm calling the outro / chorus 3. And basically the lyric, the first 2 times is frustrated, incorporated. And then there's a filtered backing vocal, put me out of my misery. And then we get another frustrated, incorporated. I do it for you. Would you do it for me? And on that line, the band kind of does this thing. It's kind of getting that pre-chorus rhythmic effect that I've been talking about. It's not anywhere near the same thing as that part, but it's harking back to that with the lyric. The third time, frustrated, incorporated. I think you're saying ever after happily, would you do it for me? I don't know exactly. And then we get another really cool Beatles-esque vocal panned off to the right and filtered. I know just what you need. And this happens for 5 more times. On the 8th time, you say frustrated, incorporated. We get no backing vocal responses and the band comes to an end. And the track fades out. I'm assuming you played this at every Soul Asylum show since you released it?
More or less, yeah. I mean, and that's one of those things where if somebody needs to learn the song, we don't give them the record. We give them a live version, because anything on a record that has a fade, you got to figure out how to end live.
That's very true. Very true.
I mean, I think at the end there, it's all trying to just throw everything in there together for a big send-up and then get out, but it doesn't happen like that live. And I can't honestly tell you when the last time I listened to that was. It's been a while. And you're reminding me of things I forgot were in there.
Yeah, no, and I'll tell you, the mix, I mean, we're talking, this is going back 29, almost 30 years, and the thing just sounds amazing. I always give it the car test. My listeners know I crank it up. My car sounds great. I just jam down the road and I listen to this song, and it's just it's so good. I want to thank you so much for taking the time out. I know you're on the road. I hope you have an amazing show tonight. Get out there and check out Soul Asylum. Your 13th album just came out, Slowly But Surely, and Shirley is spelled like a lady's name. like the airplane movies. I love it. It came out on September 27th, which is my birthday. So
all right.
Yeah, man. What else is happening with Soul Asylum before we close?
You're getting an awesome birthday present, man.
I certainly am.
Well, we continue on this tour, and then the record comes out, and we do a headlining tour with Juliana Hatfield opening, and Shirley is Shirley Muldowney, who's the first woman of drag racing. So the album has a picture of her on the cover.
That's awesome.
She's a real American hero, and she gave us her blessing to let us use her photo and her image, and hopefully I'll get to meet her,
That'd be awesome. Well, once again, thanks for carving out some time for us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate your time as well.
I'm taking the high road. I'm tired of the lovers. I'm tired of losing fights. I can't stand the suffering. Shame on me. I've lost all control. I've got my eyes wide open. So come on, get it done. Get off the low road.
Hey everybody, the song you're hearing is High Road from the new Soul Asylum album, Slowly But Surely. So make sure you check that out and don't go anywhere. We got lots more Chris Makes a Podcast coming right up after a few words from our sponsors.
Oh, it's such a clutch off-season pickup, Dave.
I was worried we'd bring back the same team.
I meant those blackout motorized shades.
Blinds.com made it crazy affordable to replace our old blinds.
Hard to install?
No, it's easy. I installed these and then got some for my mom. She talked to a design consultant for free and scheduled a professional measure and install.
Hall of Fame son.
They're the #1 online retailer of custom window coverings in the world.
Blinds.com is the GOAT.
Go to Blinds.com for 40% off site-wide. Blinds.com. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Decisions.
Wait a minute. Are you still looking for cars on Carvana?
Yeah, decisions.
When I used Carvana, I found the exact car I was looking for in minutes. Bought it on the spot.
Electric or full diesel? Decisions.
Come on, you've been at it for weeks. Just buy it already.
You're right. Crossover it is. Decisions decided.
Whether you know exactly what you want or like to take your time, buy your car the convenient way with Carvana.
Hey there, Krista Makes a Podcast listeners. Ready to take your podcast experience to the next level? By signing up for the supporting cast at KristaMakes.com, you not only ensure the continued production of our show, but also unlock exclusive perks. Subscribers receive a weekly bonus episode of our other podcast, The After Party, co-hosted by Chris Fafalius and myself. Many fans rave that The After Party is just as enjoyable as the main show. And with close to 200 music-centric episodes in the archive, there's a treasure trove of entertainment awaiting you. Thank you for tuning in and for your support in keeping the podcast going strong. Join us at KristaMakes.com and let's keep the fun conversations going.
As we near the end of the show, here's a band you might not know.
Welcome to this week's Band You Might Not Know. If you'd like your band to be considered for Krista Makes a Podcast, email your best song via MP3 only and a short bio to bandyoumightnotknow@gmail.com. This week's featured artist is Dog-Eared, a 3-piece pop-punk band from Dundee, Scotland. The band prides themselves with a DIY work ethic. Super cool. Their debut album, It's Probably Benign, came out earlier this year. Here's a snippet of their song, Hygiene.
The Wrap with Chris and Chris.
Chris, it was cool to have Dave back on the show. I didn't think Dave Pirner was going to be one of our repeat offenders in 250 or so episodes that we've done so far. That was a big surprise. I thought it was really cool to think about demoing on a 4-track nowadays. Now, my band's been around long enough and I've been writing songs long enough that I did get to use a 4-track, which I'm sure you did at some point too, Chris. But what I like about thinking about the 4-track is the limits of it. It makes you focus on the basics of the song and making the song as strong as possible without all the ear candy that you can get into with Logic or Pro Tools or whatever that might make a mediocre song seem like it's better. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I kind of had said something about mixing these out to here, and he kind of laughed, and he said, mixing? And basically what he meant by that is what you just said. There wasn't a lot going on with a 4-track, hence the name. It had 4 tracks. So these were rudimentary demos at best, just sketches, ideas to be able to show the label, your bandmates, or a producer what you're working on.
Right. It's also so funny, Chris. My friend Matt Kelly, who produces and co-hosts One Hit Thunder, does another podcast called Weird Algorithm. And today, the episode that they released was about Syndicated Incorporated by Weird Al. So I do think it's funny because I think somebody on that episode actually said that they knew about the Weird Al song before they knew who Soul Asylum was. And Dave said the same thing. I think there's probably maybe a few bands and artists that I knew the Weird Al parody cover first before I knew who the actual band was. But what a cool way to find out about a band.
Well, I was going to ask, did they have Dave on that show? Because he talked about being on some podcast.
Yeah, it wasn't that show. But it was something with Chris Ballou, he said.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure there's a bunch of Weird Al related podcasts out there. Pretty cool. You know, I loved how candid he was talking about their experience with major labels because they're all different.
Yeah.
You know, I've had bands on here. We had to use the same producer because we were following up the big album that had success. Of course, you're going to use the same guy, which doesn't always add up to success. We've seen that before. And here, Dave basically said that they've been wanting to work with Butch for a long time. Think of how in demand, Chris, he was in the early 90s Butch.
Yes, but on the other hand, Chris, think about in the mid-90s, you didn't get much bigger than Soul Asylum right around the time of Runaway Train. At that point, they probably could have picked any producer in the world too, and Butch could have probably worked with any band.
True.
So it was kind of like a match made in heaven there. And and they made another awesome album. At that point, you were talking about like their experience with the A&R and the major label. Well, at that point, they had been an indie band for what album was this? Was this their 7th album?
Yeah, it was their 7th record. They had been a band for 14 years at this point, which doesn't seem like a long time to me now, but that is a long time. From 1981 to 95, the changes that they saw. They were on Twin Tone, which was their own label. They released a couple records. Then they did a record, 2 records for A&M, and then they got signed to Columbia. And Grave Dancers Union came out, and the rest is history.
Well, that should be the blueprint for any band ever. I think of your band that way too, where it's like you get to a point where you're on a major label, and I don't know all the ins and outs of your experience, Chris, but your band, even if you didn't have some mega hit, you had built that fan base and could have a career forever. And Soul Asylum's probably the same way. They could call their own shots. They don't need an A&R guy. Whereas it's different if it's a band that doesn't have a fan base, all of a sudden has a hit because a major label pushed it, and then they can't fall back on that. And they are more subject to everything the major label demands. Whereas Soul Asylum could kind of call the shots.
Yeah, and that's a great point. I think that, Dave might have not been feeling pressure because of exactly what you just said, but that doesn't mean that there isn't external pressure from within the label, the people, your A&R guy, because they're trying to sell records. It's a numbers game, especially back then, and they want to repeat that formula, which happens a lot of times. Like, oh, why'd the follow-up record sound exactly like the last one? It's like, well, they tried to recreate that lightning in a bottle.
Well, you said it too, the internal pressure. That's what you asked him about the most was like, did you feel the pressure to one-up yourself? Because grass is always greener. You have some hit. I like to think if I had a hit song, I'd be satisfied and happy for the rest of my life. Truth of the matter is, most people are going to be like, no, I want more. I want another hit, and I want to outdo what I did before. So I would think the internal pressure would be the most pressure you would have.
Yeah, basically he said, or what you said, I think is very true. Here's a band that's been around for 14 years. They had a fan base, with or without Grave Dancers Union. They had a career. They were out. It was their livelihood. But I told Dave this song's almost 30 years old, and it sounds absolutely amazing. I mean, Andy Wallace, Butch Vig, you can't really screw that up, right?
That is the ultimate combination. Like honestly, if you gave me any combination to record an album with, Butch Vig producing it and Andy Wallace mixing it, do you get any better than that for a rock band? I don't know.
It's pretty much at the top of the food chain there.
Yeah. And Chris, I also loved that you talked about it. Frustrated Incorporated. First of all, I can't believe it's not the name of the song. Even the parody of it is called Syndicated Incorporated by Weird Al. So he didn't even parody the name of the song. He went with what people know it as. Because to be honest, Chris, when the publicist came at us about wanting to do this episode and gave a few songs that she thought would be cool for this episode. When she said Misery, I didn't realize it was this song, you know? Obviously, I know this song. So I was really surprised. He was like, no, we never thought about that. I'm like, really?
Well, I mean, yeah. And to the point I was making, it's like that to me is the song title. The whole outro says Frustrated Incorporated 8 times. Chorus number 2, the chorus where it says put me out of my misery. You get misery in the chorus twice. But the lyrics are different both times. So if you're trying to get an audience to remember a hook, the song is, I didn't really say this in so many words. It's a very interesting arrangement. Yeah. Very cool. And I love this song. It's top 3. I'm gonna go ahead and say it's my favorite Soul Asylum song.
Wow. I would say that my favorite Soul Asylum song is probably the song we did last time with him, Somebody to Shove, because that song's freaking awesome. That song's punk.
And for the Soul Asylum fans, we also had we had the option of going with Black Gold, another great song.
Great song.
Maybe another time. In the meantime, head over to ChrisDeMakes.com and sign up for our supporting cast, where you can help keep the lights on here at Chris DeMakes a Podcast. ChrisDeMakes.com, where you get extra episodes from Chris and I called The After Party, where we will talk to you about such things as music and life, and very little about sports. We don't talk too much about sports, but if we do, we always praise the teams in Pittsburgh, right, Chris?
That's right. I'm from the Steel City. That's what we got here in Pittsburgh, man. Them sports teams. It really helps us out a lot. And the cool thing about the after party, it's a couple bucks. You sign up and you instantaneously get hundreds of episodes in our back catalog and a new episode every week. And you allow us to keep making Chris DeMakes a Podcast. It is the most direct way that you can keep the podcast going. And another direct way you can keep the podcast thriving is to go to Apple Music or Spotify. You can do this on Spotify too, and leave us a 5-star review. On Apple, you can write a little paragraph or a sentence for other people who are perusing the podcasts, and they could see that this is a podcast they might like from your words. And sometimes we'll read them on here. Unfortunately, I didn't pull one up today. So we're going to skip reading one today, but usually we do read a review at the end here.
We're not going to read one today because you're going to go read them for yourselves. And when you get done, you can leave us a 5-star review. Thank you so much to each and everyone listening. You keep the show going. It's you. It's the people that listen. Kiss had the Kiss Army in the 70s. We have the Chris DeMakes a Podcast Army. Thank you so much. Want to thank this week's guest for sitting in with us, Mr. Dave Pirner. And we'll see you next week. Hey friends, have you been loving Chris DeMakes a Podcast? Well, spread the love by leaving a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Don't hesitate to share what you enjoy about the show in an actual written review on Apple Podcasts. Not only does it help more people discover us, but we often read reviews in the wrap segment of the show. It's a quick, cost-free way to support us and takes just a minute of your time. Your reviews mean the world to us and help us keep the podcast thriving. Thank you for being a listener, and thank you for being a friend. What makes a song a smash on the charts? Is it talent? Luck? Timing? Well, as chart analyst and pop critic Chris Molanphy would say, it's all that and more. Chris hosts Hit Parade, a podcast from Slate, where he tells tales from more than a half-century of pop chart history. Through storytelling, trivia, and song snippets, he dissects how the artists you love or hate dominated the airwaves and shaped your memories forever. He's explained why Steely Dan is yacht rock and Jimmy Buffett isn't, why girl groups dominated the early 60s and boy bands the late 90s, how the members of disco band Chic wrote a bass line that launched hip-hop, how Taylor Swift pivoted from country to pop, how Sam Cooke invented soul and James Brown invented funk, and what exactly a one-hit wonder is, and whether the band Aha is a one-hit wonder. I think you'd really like it. So for tales of the hits from coast to coast, make sure to follow Hit Parade wherever you get your podcasts.
One Hit Thunder is a podcast where we both celebrate and have a good laugh about bands and artists that had just one hit that we all know. Each week, we're joined by a guest from the world of music or comedy to learn more than you ever thought you would about some songs that you can't forget. And we decide if they brought the one-hit thunder or were nothing more than a one-hit blunder. Look, if you listen to the show, you're probably going to laugh, and I guarantee you're going to crush next time the bar has music trivia. Tag Team, Jane Child, Meredith Brooks, Looking Glass, Sean Mullins, Eiffel 65, EMF, Crash Test Dummies, Crazy Town, Chumbawamba. We have hundreds of episodes in our back catalog and a new episode each week, so pass the Dutchie, make sure you're connected, and subscribe to One Hit Thunder wherever you get your pods.